Welcome to the AfterWord. Thank you for listening.
What?
I don't know. Hey, thanks for listening. Thanks for...
Is that how we're starting? You're just going to roll in like that? A big long pause. Eric's comfortable with long pauses.
Yeah, it's weirder on a podcast, though, because you think maybe my battery died.
Yeah, or maybe my car stopped running.
Don't worry, I'll take out that long pause.
No way. Leave that in there. It's a pregnant pause.
I'll make it longer.
It's a pregnant pause waiting and anticipating what's coming.
Yeah, but that's the problem. There was no like good question or something that we're waiting in.
There is never a good question.
To figure out you're going to be like, where the couches are orange. Where you're like, oh, I did that one
I
last week.
don't think ahead.
So
Yeah.
You just looked really confused during the pregnant pause.
That's not the first time. Thanks for listening to the AfterWord. I'm joined by Kirsten and Vince and Betty. And we are going to look at the passage that was preached yesterday a little bit more, as well as talk about where we see God's glory in this passage. This is helpful for me. We hope it's helpful for you too. There are so many layers here. We are here in 1 Samuel chapter 4. But before we get to that, I have an intro question that I'm really actually pretty excited to ask. I'm curious what the answers are. And here's the question. You're going to learn something about us. Here's the question. How long do you leave leftovers in the fridge? Pregnant pause.
Yeah. Why don't you start, Eric? Kick us off.
Sure. About probably a week and a half.
Really?
A little on the long side.
Yeah. Do you scrape the top layer off and then eat it?
My wife's timeline is much shorter than that, I will say. So if you think I'm gross, just rely on my wife, and she's not gross. But it depends on the food, too. Like some things I probably wouldn't leave in there quite that long, but other things I do. I tend to leave a little bit longer.
Well, what will you leave longer?
Probably pizza. There's a lot of preservatives in that usually anyway. Probably getting the looks. Bread-related products I would not. Deli meat.
Isn't there bread in pizza?
Yeah, but it's been like preserved with stuff, I think. And probably a lot of salt.
What other bread-related products are we talking about? Like
a sandwich, like a leftover sandwich I'm not going to leave in there.
Communion.
Oh,
Communion
sure.
bread. French toast.
So my guideline's about a week and a half. If it's 5 days, I always think, oh, it's okay. A week, though, I start to think, maybe I should smell it first. And go, I'm going to stop. Hey, what do you guys think?
I mean, if it's fish, it's only 2 days.
Oh, yeah. We don't usually have fish, so that's a good point.
Yeah. And then if it's meat, maybe 5 days. And then, I don't know, like there's actually I sent mashed potatoes this morning with Asher that I think they're only 5 days old, but it's never more than a week.
Mashed potatoes turn. Yep. Those can be a tricky one.
But, not more than a week. But they were only 5 days, so they were well under the limit.
You're right.
There is some meatloaf left in the fridge, though, that will probably end up going to the trash, if I'm being honest.
It kills me throwing leftovers out.
Me
just throwing
too. Them out. And there's one person on the couch next to me that doesn't eat leftovers. I won't say who. And then a couple of my kids are not great with leftovers. And then a couple of them will eat the leftovers periodically, but just depends on the person.
Yeah.
Yeah, there's my answer. Won't eat it.
So it doesn't matter.
It doesn't matter. You can put it in there nine months.
Because you're going to eat it anyway.
Yeah.
What if it's a meal you really like?
Then I should have eaten it the first time around.
Okay, so what about chili, where chili gets better over time as it flavors mix together?
Really?
Yeah, that's true.
It's true.
It's like proven
and
probably.
Spaghetti sauce gets better. Vince, anything he has to... I mean, you've seen the lunches he brings to work.
Non-existent lunches, or a bag of nuts and a banana.
Nuts and an apple or a banana. Anything he has to heat up, or... Yeah, he does not eat. So.
Yeah, let's peel the layers away on this, Vince. What does this say about...
If there's any preparation needed, it gets in the way of life, and I don't want to do it. The end.
We need a counseling session right now, I think.
I need way more counseling sessions than you have time and
beyond
money
my
for.
ability.
Yeah.
Betty, what about you? What's your threshold?
I honestly am pretty similar to you, Eric.
Good.
It depends on the food, but I usually just kind of, I don't know, if it's in there, I'm like, it's kind of been here a while. Maybe I shouldn't eat it anymore. Then I'll get rid of it. but I usually just depend upon like sight and smell and call it sufficient.
There's a reason why God gave you eyes and a nose,
but
right?
I feel like a lot of it comes with just the need for convenience rather than like cooking and stuff, with being really busy through school and like financial things too. Like, oh, I don't want to get rid of this thing that I spent money on if I don't think it'll kill me. So if there's mold or something, I'll usually get rid of it.
Oh,
Well, usually.
Well, actually, no, always. I was going to say sometimes I cut stuff off, but if it's like leftovers, I'll get rid of it. But I've never had moldy leftovers for the most part.
See,
For the most part.
My grandma grew up in the Depression, and so she threw away nothing.
Yeah.
And I remember, like, she used to come and visit us, and we'd have popcorn. If there was leftover popcorn, she'd have it the next morning with milk and sugar on it. Like, she threw away nothing.
No, that's fair. And I mean, I'm also like cooking just for myself. So if I make a big thing, leftovers last a long time. So I just eat them as long as they last, even if it's maybe questionably long.
Listener, I don't know if you can tell, but Betty is also sick. So I don't know if some of these things go together. Like, you're willing to eat anything, and you're also the one who's sick right now.
Yep, it's from my old leftovers.
Thank you for sharing, everybody. Sharing your heart a little bit there. I appreciate that.
Was that heart? Was that heart level?
I think there's a little bit of heart we saw. I was vulnerable a little bit.
Yeah, I was pretty vulnerable.
Vince, how about a recap from 1 Samuel chapter 4?
We're just gonna. That's the transition, huh?
I am a master at transitions.
You saying that you were vulnerable and me moving.
And there exposes Eric's vulnerability.
Yeah.
I got a little insight into his vulnerability this morning, but I'm not going to go into that. That's his story to tell.
That will be on our paid subscriber edition of this.
Our Patreon.
Yeah, there we go. If we ever start making money for this, we've rounded up a unique group of people. The recap of chapter 4 is it starts with this bridge between chapter 3, Samuel's ministry of prophecy, into chapter 4, and it goes right into it with the Israelites fighting the Philistines and the Israelites losing the battle. There was defeat. And so they get together and say, well, why did we lose? We should get the Ark of the Covenant of God and bring it back. And that the wording through chapter 7, I think it's through chapter 7, Ark of the Covenant is mentioned multiple times. So that is the theme that we'll see over these next several weeks, is the Ark of the Covenant of God. Anyway, so they say, we need to go get the Ark of the Covenant of God and bring it back, and maybe we will win the next battle. And wouldn't you guess, they did not. In fact, there were 7 times more than that casualties than the first battle. And so a man of Benjamin runs back to share with Eli the news, and the city runs back to Shiloh and communicates the news of the loss. And when he comes to Eli and tells him about the loss of his 2 sons, which is fulfillment of prophecy all the way back to chapter 2, he tells him about the loss of the battle, the loss of his sons, and also the capturing of the Ark of the Covenant by the Philistines. Eli falls over, his neck breaks, and he dies. Similarly, his daughter-in-law, Phinehas's wife, gives birth to a child, in the process dies as well, but before she dies says his name's Ichabod, which is it means the glory of the Lord has departed. And all of that is because the Ark of the Covenant of God, the Ark of God, has been captured. I will say this, because I don't think I've mentioned this yet. This fits into the recap of the last several weeks. The Ark of the Covenant, if you remember, was the box that was commanded by God to be constructed back in the wilderness wanderings, and that was the very presence of God, and it was in the middle of the tabernacle, and it housed things like the bud of Aaron and the staff and the. What
do you mean, the bud of Aaron?
Oh, there was the ever budding branch that came from Aaron. The what else was in there? Help me out here. What else was in
The Ten Commandments.
Ten Commandments? Yeah. What else?
I don't remember.
Harrison Ford's hat and whip were in there. Is that a different? That's a different story.
That's different.
Oh, okay. Yeah. So anyway, that's the Ark of the Covenant. But for the people, joking aside, for the people, this is the very presence of God. So God dwelt among them from that place. On top of the box was the cherubim with outstretched wings. So it was for the people a significant piece of furniture that was in the tent at Shiloh.
So not a very uplifting chapter.
Yeah, we haven't hit many of those yet in 1 Samuel.
No kidding. I want to start here and kind of actually work way backwards a little bit. I shared this earlier with Vince, Kirsten, and Betty. This is what was shocking to me in this chapter, and I probably should have known it was coming, but I didn't catch it. So they go and they bring the ark so they don't lose again. And in verse 4, this is what it says. So the people sent to Shiloh and brought from there the ark of the covenant of the Lord of hosts, right? So he says, God of armies. And then it says, who is enthroned on the cherubim. All right, so we just upped the ante a little bit more. Like there's this sort of God. And the two sons of Eli, Hophni, and Phinehas were there with the ark of the covenant of God. So there's this, if it seems like on first reading that there's this big procession of this powerful God of the universe. He's about to go to war. And so then verse 5 through 9 is about how the Philistines are shaking in their boots, if people still say that. And then in verse 10, the very next verse says, so the Philistines fought, and this was shocking, Israel was defeated. Now, to your point yesterday, Vince, I should have known that was coming because of this way it was set up.
Yeah.
And maybe that's what I want to talk about a little bit. So that's shocking to me. But if you go back and look at verse 3, it maybe shouldn't have been, where the people were relying on he or it, depending on how we translate that pronoun there, to come and save them. Can we talk about that a little bit, the significance of what was maybe happening in the people's hearts in their approach to God and this battle, and why it should not have shocked me?
Yeah, there's a couple things. I'll briefly, in case you didn't, if you weren't with us on Sunday, you may not catch this. That verse 3, the very last part of verse 3, where they tell the elders, let's bring the Ark of the Covenant of the Lord here from Shiloh, that it may come among us and save us. Or it could be translated that he may come among us and save us from the power of our enemies. It or he, if it's it, they're talking about the box. And so, I mean, just a crass way of saying it, they're talking about a religious relic that they should bring along as a trophy, that may have some special power in it. If it's he, they're actually talking about God, but the question there, the presence of God with them, the question there then has to be, well, why are they just now thinking about it? Why is that a second-hand thought? Why did they not go into battle the first time with God with them? So either way, there are some problems. There are some hard issues. Now, to your question, Eric, what was your question? Sorry.
The significance of that pronoun and how the people were thinking of their God in relation to the battle.
Yeah, again, a couple different ways to go at it. And I think both are viable options, but both have some hard issues. So I guess one way to do it is just let's talk about both options. If it's it, let's go get this thing. It maybe will have some power. What's that mean? How does that work out in our lives? How have we done that?
I mean, I can't think of a specific time personally that I have done that, like thinking, oh, if I bring my Bible, then I'll have more power. I don't know. I'm trying to think through if that's something.
Yeah, it may not be a physical thing, but I think the way I see it is, are there things that we do, religious things that we do, that will somehow give us this idea that because of that religious thing we're doing, we have more ability, or God is on our side?
I mean, it's hard because, I mean, I think you can look at something like fasting and you can see throughout Scripture that fasting maybe increases our prayers at times, or quickens them to God's ear. I don't know. And so I don't know if I've fasted with the intent of thinking, okay, this is how I'm going to win God's favor necessarily. But, I think there could be things like that we misplace at times our understanding of why we're doing something.
Yeah, I can't think of specific instances, but I know, like, it's gone through my mind before. Like, oh, if I just read my Bible a little bit more, or if I just prayed a little bit more, then, like, God would see me or hear me, or something would go my way, and knowing that that's a totally incorrect view of things. But I also think when I was a kid, so a lot of my perspectives were way off when I was a kid, but I had this little coin that I used to carry with me that had the 10 Commandments on it. And I remember kind of thinking when I carried it around all the time, like, oh, like, I'm holier because I have this, like, with me, and this reminder with me always. And it kind of makes me think of that. Like, there wasn't anything specific I was trying to, like, get or, like, win God over for, but I think that was, like, an immature and untrue, like, thought I had in my mind. It was like that this thing and this reminder of, like, God's commands is going to make me holier or make him see me more.
I think when we moved here, and 6 months after we moved here, Solomon got sick, there was a piece of me that felt this confusion and maybe anger with God of, like, we moved here to do your work and to serve you, and this is what we get a gravely ill son who may not survive. And so I think I went through a season of wrestling with God, of just kind of feeling a sense of, well, hey, I'm serving you, and this is the good you have for us. And so I imagine in that there was probably some posture of thinking God owed us something. Maybe God owed us an easier path or an easier way forward because we were sacrificing in order to plant a church. And so, and it wasn't until Solomon got sick that all of those wrong beliefs got exposed.
Yeah, there's tension for me in this, because on the one hand, God owes us nothing, and I understand that, I believe that. And on the other hand, Jesus invites, commands, exhorts us to pray and pray persistently. And I don't always know how to reconcile those things. I know that me praying persistently doesn't mean that God owes me something. I can't manipulate God, but at the same time, why is it only to shape my own heart that I pray persistently, or does God in his sovereignty ordain to use that to answer it gets messy. There's tension there for me.
Yeah.
They asked the right question, like, why has the Lord defeated us today? But I think their solution is wrong. Like, we need to go bring in the ark. And so they started out asking the right question. And so I think, we can learn from that it is good to ask the question of why are we facing what we are facing? What is the Lord up to? I think where they went wrong is there's no acknowledgement of sin, and there's no appeal for mercy from God by Israel. And they wanted the power of God without actually having the presence of God. And so you can kind of see how they went way off course in the process. So they started out with the right question, but then there was not a humble response to search their own hearts first. It was why did God defeat us? Okay, now we're going to try to use him differently. And so it was just a continual exposure of their own hearts.
I think the idea of use him is really good here.
Yeah, I think that's a good word too, Kirsten. And I wonder I don't know if this will be helpful maybe for conversation. It would be speculation, but let's back up and ask the question. I wonder why they didn't bring it the first time.
Yeah, Samuel was not involved that we know of.
Yeah. So why did they not bring it the first time? What was going on in their hearts? We don't know. This is all speculation, but for the sake of conversation, did they not bring it because had they won the first battle, would they have thought, oh shoot, next time we should bring the ark?
Yeah.
Was it only because they faced defeat, or was it only because their expectations were not met that they felt the need to massage the situation some?
When I'm trying to think of we're coming out of the period of the Judges, and Judges closes with, and everyone did what was right in his own eyes. And so there was not this robust worship of God. There was not this deep understanding of who God was. There was a kind of everybody does their own thing and they all think it's right. And so I just wonder if, because there'd been this long season of a lack of right worship, and you see it in the temple, you see that even Phineas and Hophni are godless men, and they are in the temple. And so I wonder if it's more of a reflection of the culture at the time, and that, it seems like the household gods of the era have bled in. And so in that era, in that time, they had their household gods, and they would pray to their household gods, and they would try to worship their household gods to get what they wanted. And so it's more of a reflection of how the Israelites have been so shaped and formed by the culture that they're living in, that their God has become just a reflection of all the other gods of the culture.
So are there things right now that, this might take a little bit of thought, that you are expecting of God? And the expectation could be based on his character, or based on what you want, or based on doing the right things or something. If you can think out, maybe it's projects, maybe it's something in your family, I don't know. Are there things right now that you are expecting? Like Israel here was expecting victory. God did not give them victory. Are there things that you're expecting right now from God?
This is going to sound really cynical, but I'm expecting disappointment. I think I'm in a place right now where I'm struggling to believe the goodness of God.
Mm-hmm. So, Kirsten, would you say it would be more surprising for you right now if God brought something that was not disappointment? Would you say it that strongly?
Probably, yeah.
Yeah. Oh, it's a hard place to be.
That's a good question. Do you have anything in mind, Eric?
No, I never think about answers.
Your
to my
own
questions.
answers, yeah. That's good. It's a typical host.
Here's the question again. Are there things that
you can say that into the mic, Betty? Betty just whispered, "What's the question?"
Are there things that you're expecting of God?
I don't know that I've thought about it this way. No, did you have an answer?
Oh no, go ahead.
No, please.
Nobody wants to answer.
No, I don't know that I've thought about it this way, but I think I have. Expectations sounds so entitled in this way. I don't mean it that way, but
demanding, kind of.
Yeah, assumptions is maybe a better word when I think about what I'm about to say. I have assumptions that, or expectations, I guess, that as I hopefully continue to be faithful to what God's doing, that He will show us the fruit of the labor we're in as a church. So I have some expectations, but He's not promised that.
Right.
So I have these expectations, we're going to continue to be faithful as elders to try to lead the church forward. And as we do that, my expectation is that God is going to show us fruit. Here's where the expectation is. The expectation is, what is that fruit?
What do you mean? You have expectation of specific fruit?
Yeah, okay, so God's going to show us the fruit of more people following Him, and more people being a part of the church, and more, and on, whatever that is. So I think the expectation is not necessarily God will bear fruit here. God will show fruit, because I know that will happen, but the fruit may not be what I want. Does that make sense? It may be something different. Yeah. He will continue to work, but His working may be something different than I am expecting.
Yeah. Yeah. My answer, and this, I do not mean this in an overly spiritual way. I fully assume, I would even say expect this next year to have significant challenges as a part of it. I don't know what those are. God has brought a fair number of those. It seems like He works in accelerated ways, if that's a fair way to put it, in them. So I do assume that. It seems like I might be dodging the question a little bit, but that is an assumption that I have for this next year.
Yeah. Betty, you were about to drop a really great answer on us.
Yeah. I feel like mine is like pretty broad, and I just feel like I have a lot of expectations for clarity and discernment in like what's next in life. This is a scary time of life because it's the first time I haven't really had like the next few years like mapped out for me. So it's kind of like overwhelming to know like what could be next or like how long to stay in certain things and stuff. So I think it's been easy for me to assume that clarity would come pretty quick, because anytime I was making plans like through school, it was like for the summer or for like the next school year. So those answers usually came quicker because time moved quicker. But I think right now it's like, wow, everything is like before me. So I think I'm expecting like some immediate clarity in like a very like tangible way to come like now. But I think I lost track of what I was saying. But yeah, I mean, that's like it. I think just expectations for what's next or what the future could be. And I'm also like wrestling with I feel like all of these things or anything that I desire to do has to happen in my 20s. So I need to know when that's going to happen like as soon as possible, or else I can't do it, which is also not true. But
Because you are what, 23?
22.
Oh, so you only have 8 years.
8 years for the rest of my life, really.
Yeah. To take it back to the text, I just wonder, when these people clearly had an expectation that God was going to fight for them. It's clear because of their response in verse 3. When the people came to the camp, the elders of Israel said, "Why has the Lord defeated us today before the Philistines?" They had an expectation that was not going to happen, or they wouldn't have asked that question. And I think that's what we have to wrestle with, is what are those things that we're fully anticipating God to do, because that's who he is, right? But he never promised them that he would fight the Philistines and beat them, at least in that battle. Ultimately, we know that the battle's won. And so maybe that's a better way to think about it. Ultimately, we know that God is going to work, and it's going to be powerful, and it's going to bear fruit, and that fruit that's being born is going to be for his glory and all of that ultimately. But how we get there, I think, is what we get sidetracked by, because it doesn't meet our expectation or what we're anticipating or the assumptions we have and how things are going to work out.
Yeah, I think that ties into my assumptions for this next year. My assumption is he's going to bring difficulty, because that's how he's going to choose to continue to move among us in tangible ways.
Because that's what we've seen over the last couple of years.
Yes, yeah, that's right.
And I think that's where, and to Kirsten's point, I mean, you face that long enough, and sinfully, I'm not calling you out, I'm there too. I think we begin to then expect God to do that. And we miss the places where God is also doing some really powerful, unbelievable things right in front of us, and we begin to miss it because our expectation is, well, yeah, but he's also going to bring some real trial. And we've experienced that. And so that's where it's going.
Well, I think too, looking at where the people have come from, I'm in Exodus right now, and how God rescued his people from Egypt and brought them out of Egypt. And then they, wandered through the desert. But then before they went into the promised land, they fought battle after battle after battle with Joshua. And looking at Joshua 10:42, and it says, because the Lord fought for Israel. And so they had experienced God fighting for them over and over and over again. They had experienced the miraculous of God parting the Red Sea and then parting the Jordan. So they had experienced God fighting for them. That was I don't think their expectation was actually unrealistic, because that had probably been the generational story that had been passed down for years and years and years, is that God fought for us. God showed up for us. God came in at the last minute and he rescued us when we had no other option. We were caught between Pharaoh's army and the Red Sea, and God parted the Red Sea and he made a way for us. And so I imagine there's probably a lot of confusion for them in that, not realizing that that's not always how God interacts with them, and maybe having expectations based on things that because God had done that generationally for them, and yet not recognizing the fact that they're in a different place, maybe relationally with the Lord, than some of the other situations, or that God is working to accomplish something different in this season. And so God was looking to accomplish the rescue of a people group and carrying forward his faithfulness through them. But now he's looking to accomplish something different.
Yeah, and even in the time of the judges, while the people did rebel, God always saved them. So the people rebelled, but God always raised up a judge to save them, to relieve the pain that they were walking through. So that is, yeah, they've had their ups and downs, but God has always come through. And so I think that's where they are in this place of like, maybe the word from expectations to what did they feel entitled to? I mean, it's almost a sense of entitlement for them. They knew God was going to come through, and by golly, we're entitled to it because that's what we've experienced. Again, speculation, but it does seem that way because they're asking the question, wait, what happened? Why didn't God do it this time?
Yeah, it seems like God is definitely shattering some assumptions here at the very least. The language is really strong, as you pointed out yesterday, Vince. They say, why has the Lord defeated us today before the Philistines?
Yeah.
They're not even saying, why did God allow defeat, which softens it a little bit. We do that a lot today, but they actually say, why has the Lord defeated us today? It's strong. It shattered their assumptions. And then where I started is that my assumption after that, just on our first reading, they're bringing in the ark. Okay, they recognize that they need God, so to speak, and now they're going to wipe out the Philistines. And that is shocking too. Not just shocking that they were defeated, but shocking that God allowed, God planned, God ordained his ark to be captured by a pagan people who are the enemies of his chosen people.
Well, notice how the author inserts in that second battle who brings it or who's with it when it comes.
Hophni and Phinehas.
Yeah, because what's the prophecy? That they will die on the same day. So God is orchestrating all of the events for these two boys, these two sons, to be in a place where they would die on the same day.
Yeah.
So he had to. I mean, he could have done it a lot of different ways, right? They could have been hit by I was going to say bus. There weren't buses. An ox. They could have been
caravan.
hit by a caravan.
Chariot.
A chariot. They could, at the same time on the same day. That could have happened.
Yeah.
But God is orchestrating the events for this rebellious family to be taken out like he said would happen.
And 30,000 foot soldiers.
Yeah.
It's really shocking to me. And maybe that's part of the point. Like, it should be shocking.
Right.
You know, the story should catch the reader off guard a little bit because that is the point. The point being what God is doing in the midst of all of this, even when at least Israel probably can't make heads or tails of it.
Yeah. Did you have something, Betty?
No,
Oh.
it was just the way you said 30,000 foot soldiers. I was thinking of soldiers that were 30,000 feet tall. I'm sorry.
No, that's different.
And as shocking as all of that is, thank you, Betty, for that. As shocking as all of that is, that's not what's most shocking to Eli or Phinehas's wife.
Their deaths.
Yeah.
Isn't that what's most shocking?
Yeah. Yeah. The fact that 30,000 people died, that's not what caused Eli to fall over. And the fact that her husband was killed is not the thing that caused Mrs. Phinehas to go into premature labor and all of that. It was something else. What was that, Eric?
The glory of God.
Being taken, right? Being captured, being pulled away by a pagan culture. That's what's most shocking.
Man, it is. I mean, if we read, I think, Kirsten, you were alluding to this. We read about, maybe it's you, Vince, reading about the ark and the original instructions for the ark and what the ark was. It was in the Holy of Holies. The high priest can go in once a year. Even then, they tie a rope around the guy's leg in case God kills him because it's the very presence of a holy God. I mean, this is a special, special place. And here, I guess they just get willy-nilly with it or whatever, and they bring it out to try and, which they've done before. Like the ark has been out before. And that special place, a pagan people have now captured. And really, what that says at this time is that their God was more powerful than the God of Israel because they won that battle.
Yeah.
That's insane to me. And yet still all under the sovereignty and control of the one true God. Still pushing events forward, still fulfilling his promises.
And none of it's shocking to him.
Yeah.
He does not feel at all weakened by the fact that now the Philistines have this box.
Yeah, man.
He doesn't think, oh no, now what do I do? Or, you've weakened me somehow. It's not the kryptonite to God.
But it seems like his reputation is being weakened by allowing... I mean, the Philistines had heard what he did to Egypt. His reputation had gone out there. And now the ark, his very ark, has been captured. It seemed like it would weaken his reputation. Of course, we're going to read more here in the coming weeks about that. But no, it's shocking.
Yeah.
I think, though, we see over and over again that God cares about his glory, but he's willing to let people think wrongly about him in order to accomplish his purposes and his plans. And so I think that even applies today, that how often it is that we have a wrong theology or we think badly about God in our own hurt and our suffering and whatever it is that we're facing. And yet God is okay with us having a wrong view of him as he's accomplishing his plan and his glory. And I think he knows, he's confident that he will bring things to right. And so he's not shaken when we don't view him rightly.
Yeah. Yeah, he's not confined by what we think or feel. I want to ask this question. So Israel, they were defeated by that battle. We saw that their response, like, let's go get this box, or let's see if we can manipulate God and give us a victory here. That's how they responded in defeat. I'm sure that our listener and we can identify with defeat in different ways in our lives, disappointments from God, however you want to think about that. How, instead of responding how Israel responded, what are some ways that we should be encouraged to respond when we experience defeat?
I mean, I think something Vince has said a lot in our family over the last couple of years is, I'm not questioning God, but I have questions for God. And so I think when we're in a place of feeling defeated, feeling confused, feeling hurt or wounded by what God has allowed, not questioning God and not questioning his character, but I think we see throughout Scripture that we can ask questions of God and do it in a way that is not disrespectful or dishonoring to who he is. And so yeah, I think having questions for God, what are you doing, God? Or, I mean, and again, I think the Israelites started there, like, why has the Lord defeated us today before the Philistines? They had questions. I don't know that was for God. Maybe it was. So they started with asking questions. It's just when we're really quick to then make solutions to those questions rather than sitting and waiting in the unknown.
Yeah, I'm about to say something that sounds really easy, and it's not at all. So I don't mean it to sound that way. But I think in those times of what we would see as defeat, I think we have to remember, like I said earlier, God's not shaken by this. He's not shocked by it. I don't think we can see it as a defeat of God's purpose and plan. It may feel like defeat, and it may feel extremely painful and grievous to us, but it's not outside of what God has planned and ordained, and it's not a defeat of God. So I think about, I think about Phineas's wife, that she's lost her father-in-law and her husband, and she's on the verge of death. That's defeat. I mean, that feels like defeat. And again, her concern is not those things. Her concern is that the glory of God has been stripped away from their presence, and that is that's an extremely powerful place for her. But that's not a defeat of God. So anyway, that I know that sounds easy. That sounds like a simple solution, but I think it's just something we have to constantly be reminding one another of, reminding our own hearts of, is that the things we're walking through, the valleys we're walking through, are not valleys for God. That he is not experiencing defeat like we may be feeling it.
And even push it one step further, as a part of God's perfect plan.
Right.
Which can be incredibly painful.
Yeah.
For people that are walking through just devastating circumstances right now, to be in a place of understanding that your devastating circumstance is part of God's plan.
Yeah.
Is really, really painful and hard to wrap your brain around.
Yeah. Vince, do you want to bring in Psalm 78?
Yeah, I mean, this is one of the places we see, I think, that it is absolutely a part of God's plan. I referenced it very quickly yesterday. There's a lot to cover and not a lot of time. And so you look ahead at Psalm 78, I think it starts in verse 60. This is a psalm of Asaph, and he's walking through a lot of the history. If you read the whole thing, it's a lot of the Israelite history. You get to verse 59, it says, "When God heard, he was full of wrath, and he utterly rejected Israel. He forsook his dwelling at Shiloh." Hear the action from God here. This isn't passive. This is very active on God's part. He forsook his dwelling at Shiloh, the tent where he dwelt among mankind, and delivered his power to captivity. So he delivered over his power, his presence to the Philistines, to captivity. His glory to the hand of the foe. He gave his people over to the sword and vented his wrath on his heritage. Fire devoured their young men and their young women, and had no marriage song. Their priests fell by the sword, and their widows made no lamentation. It's got to be talking about Phinehas and his wife. So the priest fell by the sword, their widows made no lamentation. Then the Lord awoke from his sleep like a strong man shouting, and he put his adversaries to rout. He put them to everlasting shame. He rejected the tent of Joseph. He did not choose the tribe of Ephraim, but he chose the tribe of Judah, Mount Zion, which he loves. He built his sanctuary like the high heavens, like the earth, which he has founded. This is where I'm going. Verse 70, he chose David, his servant, and took him from the sheepfolds. And then he goes on to talk about David. So all of this is building. This is all God's active work in all of this. And it's building to this place of pointing to the king who's coming, David who's coming, and we know a even greater king who's coming. It's all part of God's plan.
So zooming way out, which is what the psalmist is doing here,
Yeah.
we start to get the bigger picture, which is extremely difficult to do when you're in the middle of a defeat.
Yeah, when you focus in on that very thing, the expectation you had of God is not working out. The defeat feels like a crushing blow. All of that is you're right in the middle of it. You zoom out and you begin to see God's big and perfect plan over all of this.
So maybe a different way to ask the question: when you have just experienced defeat, or feel like you're in the middle of defeat, are there some helpful ways to start to zoom out a little bit, or is that impossible? And really, our best friend is time and processing, and maybe at some point, by God's grace, you'll be able to zoom out a little bit.
I think we have to constantly go back to remembering that this earth is not our home, that one day we'll be back here, but for now, in the earth, in the state that it is, that is not where we were made to live for eternity. And so just considering heaven and thinking of all that God has promised in that, and dwelling on that, and remembering that everything that we have here is fading away and will fade away. And so I think when we face defeat, it has to push our hearts to think of eternity and worship of God, and that we have that hope to look towards.
Yeah, I also think, the psalmists do this often. They look back at all of their history and point out the ways in which they have seen God as being faithful. And I think that can be a helpful practice too, to zoom out on our own lives and begin to see the ways in which God has been faithful. And sometimes, depending on where our hearts are, that can be more challenging because we are not able to see the ways that God has been faithful. And I think that's a tactic of the enemy, to whisper that lie into our ears and our hearts for us to only see the ways in which we have experienced God not being faithful. But I think if we're able to zoom out, maybe even have some trusted people around us help us zoom out and point out the ways in which God has been faithful to us, that can be a helpful thing as we look at the defeat we're walking through right now.
Well, I also think, I've said this many times, but considering God's faithfulness to our souls and not necessarily to our bodies, because our souls are eternal, our bodies are going to die. And so I think when we can consider God's promises for our souls and understand that God has promised that our souls will be eternal and will be with him, but our bodies are going to die. And so looking at God's promises through that lens rather than the expectation that God is going to protect our bodies necessarily here on earth. He's never promised that, but he has promised to protect our souls. And so when we're struggling with feeling disappointed or feeling like God has maybe feeling like we've been let down, obviously we had wrong expectations or wrong hopes of what God would do, but he's been faithful to maintain our souls, and he'll do that to the end.
Yeah, we know that God's presence was not confined to the Ark of the Covenant. It was his representative. There's a special presence of God there. It does make me wonder how much of Israel felt that God had literally left his people, and now that their God is captive to an enemy. And so this story, like the other ones, for me, pushes a lot on trust. If I was an Israelite, the Ark was just captured, would I still be able to trust that God is God and he is still moving forward, like his plan is still moving forward? I would imagine that'd be nearly impossible, trying to put myself in their place. And so that issue of trust, I think, is something that I've seen so far through this book and continues to push on me a little bit. With whatever this next year has, would I quickly go back and say, with an open hand, God is still God. He's doing something. I don't understand what it is. This seems like crazy and confusing to me, but he's still, I don't know, in control maybe. His character still is what it is.
Yeah.
We are out of time, and so I'm going to ask our last question. The question is this: where do you see God's glory here? Well, that's kind of ironic, isn't it? It talks about it leaving Israel.
We don't. It's gone.
Yeah. Yeah. What do you see of God here that raises your affections for him in chapter 4?
I mean, he shows his faithfulness in taking Hophni and Phinehas. I mean, that had been prophesied in chapter 2. And then we also see his grace in that he ended the rule of ungodly men in his temple. And so that is a grace to his people without them realizing it.
I think it's also a grace that it's going to sound strange, that he didn't cave to the Israelites' response to their first defeat. If we can only get God here, then we'll win. And I think it's a way of him showing his power, that he's over this, not them. Mm. You can't whip me around and conjure up some good thing because of what you have done, that I'm over all of this. So I think that shows his power, his glory, that he is over these things.
And just good to remember that God is God and so deserving of all worship and adoration, regardless of if expectations are met or not. And I think just like the questions too of like wondering why God doesn't show up when we want him to, and recognizing that often our view of God is wrong, or like he's the only one with the right view of sin or the right view of like who we are and where we stand. And yeah, it's easy to get caught up in those things and just forget who God is and that he's just worthy of worship regardless of what's happening around us.
Yeah, this sounds backwards, but it's a little bit comforting that the text is so strong. Say it's the Lord that defeated Israel. Because what's the alternative? The alternative is that there's some other force or something that God bowed to or succumbed to, and that's simply not the case. And so even though it's extremely difficult, it's still God and his character is still the same, and he's still over it. I don't know, leads me to worship.
Yeah, it's good.
All right, so next week is 5 through 7, I believe.
Yeah, 3 chapters. The sermon's going to be thrice as long.
Hour and a half. No, it'll be more than that. All right, sit for 1 Samuel chapters 5 through 7 for Sunday. Have a great week. Bye.
Bye.